What did you witness as a child that made you realize the evil of this world? Dad hit my mother during an argument in the car on the way to school. Told the teacher. She didn't care. My older brother, who was with me the whole time, shushed me. Realized everyone already knew that my dad beat my mother pretty regularly and just didn't care. My parents caning me whenever I misbehaved. I thought it was normal. They caned till I bled, and sometimes after that they stripped me, dragged me into the shower and kind of waterboarded me with water. I remember not being able to breathe and my cane strokes hurting as heck. I thought every kid experienced this. Not till in my 20s while seeing a therapist. It really fricked me up. My little brother's friend came to our house at the age of 9 and asked to use our can opener. 1. His mom had left him a can of baked beans for dinner. 2. Their power was out so he couldn't use their electric can opener. 3. That's right. Her plan was for him to eat a can of beans for dinner by himself in the dark. Frick crack. When I was in the 3rd grade I saw my neighbor, Johnny, drowning animals in his pool. It was absolutely terrifying because he was having fun doing it. I told my parents and they confronted Johnny's mom and dad but didn't hear anything else about it. Maybe 2 weeks later my next door neighbor found her dog dead. A day after that someone had thrown a bunch of swimming pool chlorine tabs into the kiddie pool I had in my yard where I had some pet turtles. Yeah, they were dead. Just as we learned about that, another neighbor came by with Johnny in one hand and a BB gun in the other. Caught the evil crap trying to shoot his dog. Johnny and his family moved away a few months later. Johnny may well have killed a person by now. When I was like 8 I was at this playhouse and a pigeon somehow got into the indoor area. I watched a kid grab it by its throat and smack it against this soft chair thing. It haunted me for days. I think Unsolved Mysteries was the first time I found out how fricked up people were. I also remember watching the news when the Oklahoma City bombing happened. That was pretty horrible too. My parents closed down my childhood checking account when I was 10 or 11. I put all of my birthday and Christmas money into it for years. The worst part of it, after they closed it, they kept taking my gift money and putting it into the account. To this day, they both deny it. Dead body in the road. I was in the back of mom's Mercury Topaz as we came back from church. I looked over as mom drove around the corpse. I saw the shooter leaning against a truck with a rifle or shotgun in his hands, head hung low. He killed him over an arm wrestling match that the shooter lost, which turned into a fight that the shooter lost, so he ended the party, thrown to celebrate the fact that he knocked up his girlfriend by shooting his friend who fled. Freaky crap for a 7-year-old to see. Also, one of his bullets hit a window in our school and was part of the crime scene. My mother was physically abusive towards my sister and I. Some of my first memories are hiding from her in the closets with my sister. She would beat the heck out of us then tell us that she loves us. She tried to say in court that my father was beating her when it was her boyfriend at the time. Convinced the battered women's shelter that it was my father. Even today, I'm 20 now, she goes around telling everyone that she raised us, that my father brainwashed us, and she never hurt us. I'm sitting here fuming at this. Well, I was 4 when I saw my dad murder my mom. Some days I am green with envy towards my husband for having a childhood. Frick, I've noticed you in quite a few threads but I never expected to see you post something like this. I'm sorry, man. Christmas of 2005. Christmas Eve my parents were fighting. At this point we already knew that presents weren't coming this year. I had always gotten a birthmark present anyways so I wasn't expecting much. My parents were going full at it fighting, yelling and screaming. I remember my brother and I hiding upstairs while I comforted him and put a movie on my computer for him to watch with headphones so he wouldn't have to hear the screaming. I usually broke up the fights with my parents but this time it didn't work. I went downstairs and tried to pull them apart. My dad threw something, a cup or plate I can't remember. It broke on my head and cut me up kinda bad. Part of the glass embedded itself into my mom's foot. She screamed at him in Chinese. I can't remember what was yelled. I just remember next that she left in a hurry to our grandma's house. My dad locked himself in his room and it was like that until about New Year. I had already been cooking, cleaning, and taking care of my brother basically on my own at that point but that 2 weeks really felt different. It really felt like I was on my own. I distinctly remember having to go into my personal piggy bank at the time just to be able to buy dinner for me and my brother. I remember having to go to the church and asking the pastor for advice and having him give me $20 to get dinner. He tried coming to our house to talk to my dad, but my dad denied any of it and I got beaten that night for telling others about our personal family stuff. Every day my little brother would ask when mom was coming home and why they were fighting. He thought it was his fault or something, as most kids do in situations like that. I had to spend time reassuring him it was fine while fighting back tears of my own. After New Year's my mom came back. They didn't talk for like 3 months, but then things basically went back to normal. This happens every few years now, but it's gotten more and more mild. More passive aggressive than physical, but still just ask awkward. Anyways, I know it's not as bad as a lot of the stories I read on here, and I honestly do feel a bit entitled even putting mine in the running. But I really did learn that year that the world really isn't fair and that not all families are good ones. When I was about 11 years old I got a foster cousin. My family has always been close and my horse was kept at this cousin's property, so I was there a lot of the time. Things were good at first, but as we got closer this kid started trying to do sexual things with me, like kiss my neck and stuff like that. He was quite young himself, maybe 7. Each time I'd kind of just awkwardly move away, cause I wasn't really old enough to know how to deal with it either. But it did quickly become clear to me that something wasn't right, and I did know what sex was and could understand he probably learned this behavior somewhere, and that made me realize people had taught him to be like that, and it made me very sad. To this day I wish I had known I should have talked to the adults about it so he could get help. Maybe if I had, his parents wouldn't have gotten him back. I was sitting in the car when I was like 6 or 7 while my parents grabbed something in the store and I saw a woman beat the crap out of her kid. I didn't say anything obviously, but that was fricked. Imagine that during the day, you have a mommy and daddy that you love very much. Mommy lets you paint with her and daddy makes cookies with you. You see them kiss and you know they love each other too. Then nighttime comes and after daddy sings you a song, he turns out the light and closes the door. As you hear him go down the hall to their bedroom, you put the pillow over your head so you can sleep without hearing mommy scream while daddy beat the crap out of her into the wee hours of the morning. After the course of a couple years, he starts doing it before you even go to bed. Then daddy starts doing it to you too. He sings and makes cookies, but also chokes you and punches mommy. Even people who love you can be evil, and I learned that very early on. A lot of things I've seen as an adult pale in comparison to the things I saw and experienced as a small child. My father was literally insane, and because of that, it's easy to grasp the terribleness in this world. I'm so sorry. Abuse hurts most when it comes from people you deeply love and trust. I hope you're away from him now. My mom's best friend has a daughter my age. She is Satan himself. Already from an early age on, she tortured friends and later wanted to talk her boyfriend into suicide. Around the adults she was the most polite, sweet person. I was scared of every playdate. My mother never believed me until a few years back. Sounds like the hallmarks of a psychopath. My family was really close with one of our neighbors. My brothers and I grew up with their sons. Ever since I can remember, their parents were severe alcoholics. They held down their jobs and raised their kids well, but watching how it affected their family over the years made me realize how bad addiction is from a pretty young age. My mum was reading a book at the end of the sofa with my dad sitting a few feet away. He literally stood up on the sofa, bent down touching his toes, and full-blown farted in her face. I was 6. After all the really sad stuff I needed to read that. A family member of mine had an abusive husband. My cousin was born at 25 weeks as a result. Husband went away. Aunt remarried. Cousin grew up healthy and happy with a nice stepdad. But the way she was treated made me aware of how bad people can be. Pretty mild, but I was hanging out with some kids my mom told me not to, and one of them left to go home for a few minutes, leaving behind this backpack containing a binder of some of the dopest Yu-Gi-Oh cards available. The other 2 kids, who were good friends, seemingly, with the absent third, immediately started talking about how to divide them up between the 3 of us. I ended up saying something like "let me see them" and running them over to the third kid's house. On the walk home I realized that probably a good deal of people are like this, and my mom recognized it in these kids when they were over. I still listen to her about most stuff. When I was 10, I moved and went to a new school. There was this kid that seemed off but with it enough that he could be in class with us. There was this group of kids that would do wrestling moves on him. Mind you, it was 99-2000, and just beat on him all together. I had to stand up for him quite a few times. Eventually, the school's social worker intern would make him have lunch with her. He asked her if I could have lunch with them, and I did for a few months. As an 11-year-old, came in from gym class to see that my English teacher had the news on. Proceeded to watch the second plane fly into the World Trade Center on live TV. I didn't finish my test in first grade, so the teacher puts me in the kindergarten class. The kindergarten teacher forces her class to freaking yell at me to hurry it up. You don't hurry up a kid when taking a test, you freaking dumbass looking. Stanky butt breath bee. What the heck is wrong with her? This could have left serious damage. When I was a kid, we had a special family in our neighborhood. The father is a racist and neo-Nazi who only talks about the dang Enga foreigner Muslims asylum seekers. He has not had a job for more than 20 years, and of course black people are responsible for that, and the fact that he has no degree, that he has been to prison 2 times, and that he is an alcoholic does not have anything to do with his situation, but even that is not the worst thing he has done. He has raised his children to be neo-Nazis too. I went to school with his son who always told us stories about evil immigrants and that we should start killing them. One day a family from Somalia, refugees, moved to our neighborhood, and the racist guy immediately did everything he could do to make their lives worse. His son became part of that plan. On one day, he took a really big stone and smashed it on the little black boy's head, right in front of every boy else. The Somalian kid had to go to the hospital because he didn't move for a while after being hit, and the racist guy claimed that his kid has done nothing wrong and that these things happen when people of other races try to live together. He even stated that it was the black kid's fault and said that black people do not need to go to school because the only thing they should learn is how to pick up the cotton, like in the good old times. The next day, the father of the black kid and the racist came together with the kid of the racist and the principal to talk about this. I don't know what they were talking about, but when their meeting ended, the Somalian was upset, and because he didn't speak our language, he tried to communicate with his hands, and I saw it in his eyes how desperate he was, and I knew what kind of injustice was done on this day. The principal did not punish the racist kid and the Somalian family moved away. God, this reminds me of Jerry. He was the child of neo-Nazis. We had a Holocaust survivor come to our class, and he sat there for 10 long minutes calling this man a liar and a con man. Not really the first time I realized, but a pretty vivid memory was when I was 15 or so and was walking alone down this road in Shanghai, was sort of on vacation there. 2 dirty malnourished 3-4-year-olds came out of these boxes and slowly limped over to me trying to steal crap in my pockets. I had to use a bit of force to shrug them off, and they got knocked down onto the concrete floor since they held onto my pockets with their life. It made me realize just how unfair life is when you see it in person. Those kids are most likely dead by now. Jesus. It was sleeting this one winter day and I heard a mewing sound. I had a cat expecting kittens, and I thought she had, or was in the process of, delivered. So I followed the sound until I got to the chain link fence that separated our yard from the back door neighbor. So I hopped the fence cause he had a sort of ramshackle shed that would have been perfect for a cat to feel protected and give birth in. As I got closer I realized the sound was coming from the ground level on the other side of the shack. I discovered a paper sack, twisted shut, and inside were 2 newborn puppies left to freeze to death outside in the sleet. I gathered them up, knocked on his door, and asked how he could do such a thing. He said they were the runts. I was beyond devastated. My mom drove me to the SPCA, but they called the next day and said the pups didn't make it. If this highly educated upper middle class well respected man could casually commit this atrocious act, then what in the heck else had he done? When I was 13 I lived in the duplex with my single mom who is a lesbian. Our landlord lived on the other side and had a granddaughter my age, so we would spend the night with each other when she would visit. One such visit she had an uncle, late 30s, staying too, and he made it a point to tell me how good I looked in my pajamas. He gave me the creeps and grossed me out. The following morning, the granddaughter told me her grandma, my landlord, wanted to talk to me. I went into the living room where landlord and uncle sat and they proceeded to ask me if my mom was a lesbian. At 13, and in the late 90s, it wasn't exactly something I was comfortable telling people, so I said no. They then proceeded to tell me that if she was going to heck. Landlord and uncle tried to save my soul and bring me to Jesus while condemning my mom to heck. The same guy who looked at me like a piece of meat just hours earlier. Evil. Pure evil. Really turned me off to religion too. I don't blame you for being turned off to religion after that experience. A shootout between gypsies and travelers. They were squatting on our farm in the 1970s, two different clans, and we couldn't get them out. The police couldn't get them out. Then one day the two clans started fighting, and they all pulled out these big rifles and started shooting at each other. I was 4 years old and an 8-year-old boy standing beside me got his eye shot out. Then a 10-year-old girl got her brain smashed out of her skull. I was diagnosed with severe PTSD at the age of 8 as a result of it. Watching my father grab my mom's hair and banging her head against the wall while I held my little brother's back from getting in the way. I was only 9. He was always really physically abusive to her and my siblings and I, but this was the last time he would hurt her like this again. My mom ran out of the house and sprinted down the street with her cell phone and called 911. She ended up leaving him the next week while he was a business trip. Next thing I knew, I was being forced to visit my dad with my little siblings every other weekend. Dad was so depressed that he would lock himself in his room and literally never feed us. He never had food in the house except raisins that I would always climb the shelves in the pantry to get. I remember one time I woke up to my dad in a raging fit and my little sister, who was 2 at the time, was crying her eyes out. My brothers and I went in the room she has been sleeping in and we see my dad pick her up by her ankle and just beat the crap out of her. My brothers and I just yelled and screamed at him until he put her down and we were all in shock. This all went down because she peed in the bed. I mean, she was a 2-year-old. Regardless, it was inexcusable. He continued to physically and emotionally abuse my siblings and I for years. He wasn't just terrible to us though, it was everyone. He would make waiters and waitresses cry at restaurants because nothing was ever good enough and he was very judgmental. Like God forbid if a waiter had acne on his face or an accent he couldn't understand, he didn't just not put up with it. He would make people feel so small and worthless and he seemed to enjoy it. So humiliating and hurtful to even just witness. Another example of his evilness was the time he was driving my siblings and I in a parking lot. There was a line to get out of the parking lot because you had to pay before you left. Well, a nice looking man in a minivan, who was driving his adorable looking family, had cut my dad off in line. So, my dad backs his Hummer up. I'm sitting in the front passenger seat. He's got this crazy freaking look in his eye and he's cussing under his breath. He speeds up so fast and then slams his brakes on just a couple feet away from the minivan. This dude's wife, in the minivan, just starts bursting out crying. I could see his kids looking so scared, and the poor man driving looks like he's about to throw up. He did nothing, though, except drive on. Meanwhile, my dad is so proud of himself. I couldn't understand why or how he got so much enjoyment out of scaring the crap out of that family. It broke my heart. I have too many stories to count. RA said narcissists. My friend told me this one. He got picked up by a lady, driver, and his friend, passenger, in a convertible. He got into the back and realized there was a relatively newborn baby in a car seat in the seat next to where he would be sitting. He didn't think much of it until she sparked up a joint, starting blaring music and started speeding excessively. We're talking 80 miles per hour down a 30 mile per hour road. Due to the fact that they were in a convertible, the wind was too much for the baby and the baby was going blue in the face, so my friend had to take off his jacket and cover the baby completely so it could breathe. It baffles me how the driver mother thought this was acceptable. I didn't realize it until I grew older, but the heck my original parents put me through by not taking care of me, and especially when your dad tries to say that he's taken care of me all my life when in reality, I've been raided by my grandparents. That's kind of fricked up. If you can't own up to your own mistakes, why make them? Not saying I was a mistake, but I'm sure you get what I mean. It is fricked up, you're right. Sorry to hear that, man. Hope you are living a life with happy and tender moments galore. I was in preschool This kid came up to me and called me a sucker. I then proceeded to say no, you're a sucker, at which point he cried and told on me. I tried to explain that he said it first, but I got sent to timeout and he faced no punishment. There is no such thing as justice. That kid would grow up, join a workforce and dish it out on you and your mates at every opportunity. Then one day when you've had a gutful, you'll find the perfect opportunity to get him back. But you'll find yourself in the HR department getting stood down for 2 weeks pending a harassment allegation. These little C never grow up. Took shortcut through alley in our small town. I was maybe 10 and I saw 2 uniformed cops beating the crap out of some guy. Then they just walked away. No arrest. Nothing. I was horrified. Never seen a beatdown before. The raw violence was bad enough, but the fact it was the police shattered my belief in trusting adults in general. Police in particular. I was bullied a lot as a child. So bad. I walked with my head down and never met anyone's eyes. I felt like I didn't deserve to. Then one day while at recess on the playground, I met a teacher's aide who was helping watch kids. I noticed none of the bullies stayed near her, so I became her helper. She was very nice to me, and even though I was like 7 or 8, I really considered her my friend. I started to look forward to recess. Fast forward some months, and one day after school some kids threw my sisters and I hats into a tall lost and found bin. While we were trying to get our hats out, mom really struggled. Single parent etc. Aide, who I considered a friend, caught us. I began to tell her what happened and she lit into me, yelling and scolding us for being troublemakers, telling us we're getting lunch detention etc. I'm so shocked I just start crying. I was hurt, and as sad as it sounds, I really couldn't understand why she was treating me that way. Then the knockout blow. She noticed I was crying and snapped, "I don't care about your crocodile tears." My heart shattered, but at the same time it froze. I just walked away, sobbing now, and walked home with my sister. I learned not to put my trust in anyone to that magnitude again, and just because you call someone your friend doesn't mean they'll do right by you. The next day at school I ignored her, not like she sought me out anyway. I didn't talk to her ever again, and moved away when I was 13. Years later, saw her while I was out with my mom, and my mom said hello. I still didn't speak. I think deep down the 7-year-old me is still hurt, and I feel so bad for who I used to be. Even at that young age I didn't want to live, and no child needs to feel like that. Other teachers' aides would talk about me. Teachers turned a blind eye when I was bullied. She knew, and I'll never know if she talked about me too. Mum told me that dad would beat me if he got the chance. Wasn't till later in life, when that psycho disowned me, that I realized he was a lovely man and that I need to cherish the little family I have left. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.